December 18, 1842. Carter Plantation, Georgia. The cold hits like a warning. The wind scrapes through the pine like knives on bone. The smoke from the cookhouse crawls low, too thick for dawn, too early for supper. Something in the air stings. The throat. Not just wood burning, but something sharper, bitter, unspoken. Her name is Esther. Esther, the girl with the calloused hands and eyes like stone. 23, born in the back shed behind the hog pens, raised under lashes, raised beside fires. Her breath doesn't shake, her fingers don't tremble. Not anymore, not since Naomi, not since hope. Esther, that's the name of the girl who will serve death on a porcelain plate. The big house is humming. 12 men are expected for dinner, 12 white men with wide bellies and wide opinions. The masters, the planters, the neighbors, boots like tombstones thudding down from carriages, silver polished to blind. But not yet. They haven't arrived. Not yet. The morning is still grey. Esther wakes before the rooster. She always does. Not because she's told, not because of the whip, but because she dreams in screams. Her mother's, Naomi's, Hope's. She dreams in chains, clinking like lullabies. So she wakes to silence. That's safer. She walks barefoot across frost-stung dirt. Smoke seeps through her skin. Her dress is thin, torn beneath the apron. Her hair's tied back with string, not ribbon. Her arms are lean, too lean. But her strength isn't in the muscle, it's in the memory. She doesn't speak to the other girls, she's the cook, and that's a lonely job. The others clean or scrub or bleed in the fields. But Esther has knives, Esther has fire. Esther chooses who gets fed and when, and what's mixed in the food. The smell of salt pork chokes the air already. Breakfast is done. Now comes the feast. The masters want roasted duck, yams, string beans, pecan mash, ham boiled in molasses. But Esther plans a side dish of her own. One no one asked for. One no one expects. The root powder sits hidden beneath the floorboard, wrapped in cloth, wrapped in silence. Ground by her hands 2 nights ago under moonlight. Foxglove and belladonna, a pinch for each plate, measured by the memory of lashes. The day stretches thin. The table is set in the main hall. 12 chairs, 12 gold plates, 12 silver forks that won't save them. In the cookhouse, steam wraps around her like arms that don't comfort. She moves in rhythm. Cut, stir, fold, slice. The other girls watch from a distance. They know better than to ask. Esther doesn't answer questions. They called her girl, but she was never just a girl. She was smoke in a dress. Silence. With a heartbeat, her apron is stained, not with blood, not yet, but with molasses and memory. Her knife is sharp. But today it is not the blade that matters. It's the powder, the soft death, the bitter sleep. The first pot boils at noon. The green beans simmer alone. Esther stirs with a wooden spoon and a prayer stitched into breath. A name for every swirl. Naomi. Hope. Naomi. Hope. She doesn't cry. She just remembers. The Carter house is decorated for Christmas. Pine garland. Glass baubles from Savannah. But no one sees Esther. No one sees the girl who holds the dinner. No one sees the hands that lace the death. She hears them from across the yard, in their boots, their laughter, their orders. 12 voices, 12 men, one final meal. The sky darkens early in Georgia. The sun doesn't argue, the wind doesn't wait. And Esther doesn't flinch, not because she's brave, but because she's already buried the ones she loved. Tonight, they will eat, and tonight they will fall. The bell rings from the porch. Time to serve. Esther walks across the yard, her spine straight, her face blank. The plates are warm in her arms. The spoon tucked beneath her apron presses against her ribs. A tool not for serving, for remembering. The doors swing open. The candles flicker in their holders. The masters smile. But Esther? She doesn't smile, because the kitchen wasn't for cooking. It was for war. Because the apron wasn't for cleanliness. It was for carrying death. Because the girl they ignored for years is the girl who watched, who listened, who counted. 12 masters, One for every time Naomi screamed, one for every tear Hope swallowed, one for every lash her mother took and never forgot. This is the true story of Esther, the cook who fed the fire, the girl who turned dinner into a grave. And Georgia would never taste the same again. Before we continue with the video, drop a comment telling us where you're from and what time it is over there. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Before poison, before powdered roots, before. The spoon stirred death. There were 3 girls, Esther, Naomi, Hope. 3 sisters born on the same dirt. Raised in the same cold, smoke-filled cabin behind the pig pens of Carter Plantation. Same mother, no father. Only fists and breath and silence in the dark. Esther was the oldest. Naomi was the loudest. Hope was the smallest. Esther protected them, both with her body, with her silence, with her memory. She remembers Naomi's laugh, wild, defiant, like a whip cracking the wrong way. Naomi would sing when they weren't supposed to sing. Naomi would dance when the rain came and stomp the puddles like the world owed her joy. Hope didn't speak much, but she would hum, low and soft. Her hands always touched Esther's sleeve when she was scared. When the dogs barked too loud or when Mr. Carter rode his horse too close, Esther cooked. Naomi sang. Hope hummed until the night they came. Esther was 17, Naomi was 13, Hope just 10. It was a Sunday. Rain had soaked the red dirt so deep it turned black. The firewood smoked too much, and the cabin smelled like mold and burning socks. Their mother was braiding Naomi's hair. Esther was peeling potatoes. Hope was asleep with her thumb in her mouth. The sound came sudden. Boots. Many. Too many. 3 white men. One with a book. One with a whip. One with a rope. They didn't knock. They walked straight in like they owned the floorboards. And maybe they did. Maybe they owned the air too. Carter's got debts, one of them said. Their mother stood shielding Naomi and Hope with her arms. They ain't for sale, she hissed. The whip cracked before the sentence finished. Esther didn't move. She watched the blood drip from her mother's shoulder. Naomi screamed. Hope curled into herself. The man with the book read off numbers like scripture. The one with the rope tied Naomi's wrists. She's young, the buyer said. Good hips, the little one too. Hope didn't scream. She just looked at Esther. That look, wide eyes, mouth closed, breathing fast, it carved itself into Esther's ribs. Esther, Naomi shouted. Esther, don't let them take us. She didn't move because if she moved, the whip would come again. And this time it wouldn't land on their mother. It would land on her. She stayed still, watched the rope cinch, watched the girls dragged out barefoot into the mud, watched their mother crawl forward, her mouth bleeding, crying names into the dirt. Naomi screamed until the trees swallowed her. Hope never made a sound. That night the cabin was quiet. Not because there was peace, but because grief stole sound like a thief in the dark. Her mother never looked Esther in the eye again. 3 days. Later she died of infection. The lash wound split wide. No doctor came. Esther buried her beneath a magnolia tree with her own hands. The ground was too wet, the wood too soft, but she didn't cry. She just remembered. Every inch of it. They called it a transaction, but it was really a funeral. The whip wasn't for obedience, it was for erasure. And Esther? Esther remembered everything. She began spending more time near the garden, watching what grew and what didn't, which roots the animals avoided, which berries turned black before falling. She asked old women careful questions, how to ease pain, how to stop breath, which leaves burned skin and which burned hearts. They didn't answer with words, but they gave her looks, the kind that meant, we see you. We know what grows in silence. One woman, old Ruth, whispered in her ear once, while handing her dried herbs for stew. Foxglove bloom's pretty, she said, but it breaks the heart. Slow, quiet, real quiet. Esther nodded once. That night, she tasted a leaf, just the tip. It numbed her tongue. She started collecting in secret, bits of bark, wilted leaves, rotten seeds. She dried them under floorboards, crushed them with a rock behind the washhouse. No one asked. No one dared. She watched the masters eat with fat lips and swollen fingers, watched them laugh with grease on their cheeks, watched them drink until they couldn't walk straight, and she imagined every dish with just a pinch of silence folded in. Each night before sleep, she repeated names like hymns. Naomi, Hope, Mama. She tied them to ingredients. Foxglove for Hope, nightshade for Naomi, oleander for Mama. She stirred memory into everything until food was no longer food. It was preparation. Years passed, but the screams stayed fresh. She could still hear Naomi calling her name, still see Hope's hands reaching toward her, still feel the silence afterward like hands around her throat. She cooked quietly, efficiently. She became the head cook by 21. She knew the master's tastes. She fed them well. Too well. They called her Girl still, but some started calling her the quiet one who watches too much. They didn't understand what silence could hold. Silence isn't emptiness, it's storage. Esther's silence held recipes for revenge. 12 men ran the Carter lands. 12 voices she learned by pitch. 12 boots she recognized by weight. She memorized their names, their meals, their sins. One for every year Naomi was gone. One for every prayer Hope hummed in the dark. She wasn't planning a riot. She was planning a dinner. She wasn't seeking freedom. She was serving memory. The fire in the cookhouse didn't just warm the pots. It whispered. It said soon. It said 12. It said names will fall like ash from the tongue. She collected her powders, measured her mixtures, labeled them with her sister's initials scratched into broken wood. And when she was ready, the invitation came. Christmas dinner, December 24th, 1842, 12 men, 12 plates. They called it a feast, but it was really a funeral. For the girls who died without screaming, for the mother who bled and whispered, for the girl who didn't cry, who just remembered. Esther smiled once that month, just once. It cracked across her face like a splinter of glass, and when the fire in the hearth grew hot enough, she reached beneath the floorboard and pulled out a bundle, wrapped in linen, soaked in memory, crushed with vengeance. The smell was sweet, the powder fine. The girl who lost everything was about to serve something they couldn't spit out. Esther didn't believe in ghosts, but she believed in recipes, and she had one, measured to the gram, steeped in silence, and all she needed now was 12 forks, 12 mouths, and a little green bean casserole. Not because it was Christmas, but because they forgot her sister's names, and Esther never forgot anything. December 24th, 1842. Carter Plantation, Christmas Eve. The frost won't melt, not even when the sun climbs. The wind keeps biting, sharp like nails, curling through every crack in the cookhouse. But inside, the hearth burns high, too high. The walls sweat. Esther is already awake. She hasn't slept. The eyes of the dead kept her up, Naomi's, Hope's, and her mother's, all watching from the corners of her memory, blinking in unison. This is the day, the dinner, the end. 12 chairs, 12 men, 12 graves. She counts them again with her breath, each syllable a step closer. She does not blink. The menu is grand. Roast duck glazed in honey, cornbread with sorghum molasses, candied yams, brown ham with cloves, boiled okra, corn fritters, and green beans with garlic and salt. But the green beans are hers, hers alone. No one touches the pot. No one asks. Inside it, the powder swirls. Nightshade, foxglove, angel's trumpet, measured by weight, whispered into the steam. Esther stirs with her left hand, keeping her right hand steady. She doesn't hum, she doesn't smile, but her mouth moves, soundless. Naomi, Hope, Mama, Naomi, Hope, Mama. Over and over. She ladles the beans into a small bowl, tastes it. Just a drop, just enough. The bitterness is perfect, almost floral, almost holy. Behind her, the other girls work in silence. They know something's different. Esther is walking like the air belongs to her, like her feet aren't touching the ground, Like the devil himself would hesitate before meeting her eyes. The sun keeps climbing, but it feels like dusk already. The big house smells of pine and meat. Candles flicker on the long oak table. The silverware shines like drawn weapons. And the men, they arrive laughing. 12 of them, 12 boots, heavy and arrogant. Mr. Carter at the head. His brother, his neighbor, 3 from Savannah. 1 judge, a preacher, a trader, a banker, a sheriff, a captain, a man with a scar Esther recognizes from when he bought Naomi. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't blink. She carries the platters herself, one by one, with grace, with precision. Her apron crisp, her hair tied, her hands steady. The green beans are the last to go out, still hot, still steaming, still deadly. They dig in before the blessing. The preacher mutters a lazy grace with his mouth half full, a drumstick in one hand, a fork in the other. Grease stains his collar. Esther watches from the kitchen doorway. The first cough comes from the banker. A quick bark, then again. He waves it off. The second comes from the captain. His hand goes to his throat. Esther doesn't move. By the third, the table is restless. The man from Savannah knocks over a wine glass. The scarred man is sweating, red blotches blooming across his face like fire ants. Then the vomiting starts, then the blood, then the screams. One clutches his chest, one falls backward into the fireplace. One's eyes roll white, lips foaming. Esther steps forward, calm. Hands folded, the green bean bowl still warm in her grasp. Mr. Carter stands shaking. What did you... He doesn't finish. He stumbles forward and drops like a sack of flour. Blood trickles from his nose, painting the wood. The preacher is the last to fall, gasping, mouth moving like he's still praying, still hoping. Esther walks to his side and kneels. This ain't bread and wine, she whispers. This is memory. He dies with her name on his lips, one by one. 12 names, 12 shadows gone from the land. The house goes silent. But in Esther's mind, it is loud. Loud with the names of the ones they took. Loud with every cry she bit back. Loud with fire. And vengeance. She walks to the hearth, takes a coal and drops it into the spilled cider. The flame jumps, grabs the tablecloth and climbs like it's hungry. The big house begins to burn. Esther does not run. She walks through the kitchen door, out into the cold. Smoke chases her, billowing like a memory released. The night falls early. This time of year. In the fields, no one shouts, no one orders. No one notices her leave. She disappears into the trees like she was never real. Just a ghost made of salt and silence, but the fire keeps burning, and the beans stay hot. And the smell, the bitter, holy smell, drifts far. This was not a dinner. This was a burial, a funeral fed with silver forks and linen napkins, a hymn sung through poisoned plates, a girl's final recipe, and none of them will ever eat again. 12 chairs, 12 forks, 12 graves, carved into the floor of the Carter house. But not all at once, no. Revenge never dances fast. It creeps, it sings. It kills like Esther learned to live, in silence, then in fire. The first one to fall is Mr. Lawton, the banker. His voice is always the loudest at these dinners, full of syrup and slurs. He's the first to taste Esther's green beans, heaping them on his plate, laughing about the preacher's limp blessing. The poison catches him before the wine does. His fork slips from his hand, his tongue swells, and his eyes go red like split tomatoes. He reaches for his throat. Esther watches from the shadow of the hall. Her hands are folded, her feet still, her breath even. Lawton's chair tips. His face meets the floor with a crunch, the sound of bones and betrayal. The men laugh at first. Too much wine, one mutters. Then the second one falls. Captain Reese, Confederate sympathizer, slave catcher. The one who called Naomi sweet meat before she vanished into the back of his wagon 6 years ago. He clutches his gut. His belt snaps. He howls like a hog split open. Blood pours from his mouth in threads. He tries to crawl, but slips in. His own mess. Esther doesn't move. She just whispers under her breath, Naomi, Naomi, Naomi. The others are slower to understand. They check their meat, their wine. They shout for the cook. Esther steps forward, apron clean, expression blank. "I served the food," she says, voice low. That's when Judge Fenley draws his pistol. The gun shakes in his hand. Sweat dots his forehead. "What did you do, girl?" Esther stares at him. "The beans weren't for you," she says. He fires. The shot hits the wall behind her. Too quick, too scared. The fire catches faster than the fear. It licks the tablecloth first. The cider-soaked linen curls black. Flames rise like memory reborn. Mr. Carter flips the table, trying to escape. Plates clatter. Glass shatters. Forks fall like knives. By now 6 are choking, 2 are screaming. 1 tries to leap from the window and breaks his leg instead. Esther walks through it all. She moves through the fire like it's wind, like it's breath. She stops beside the scarred man, the one who bought Naomi. She looks him in the eye as he gasps for air, his body convulsing. "You remember her name?" she asks. He tries to speak. He doesn't succeed. Esther leans closer. "Naomi." That was her name. Then she stands. His face smashes into the hardwood. The wood darkens beneath him. That's 7. 7 names, 7 reasons. The preacher is clutching his Bible with one hand and his chest with the other. He tries to spit prayers, but blood fills the verses. His voice sounds like boiling sugar, sticky and loud. Esther kneels beside him. "This isn't communion," she says. "This is truth." He dies with the book in his lap, unread and unwanted. That's 8. The trader, the sheriff, the man from Savannah, they try to run. Esther doesn't stop them. She watches them collapse one after another. 1 falls by the staircase. 1 vomits in the hall. 1 claws at the front door, smearing blood down the wood like finger paint. 9, 10, 11. And then there's Mr. Carter, the 12th. The one who ordered Naomi and Hope taken. The one who had her mother lashed until skin peeled. The one who said, "She's just a girl, she'll cook what we tell her." Mr. Carter isn't coughing, not yet. He's hiding in the pantry, behind barrels of molasses and pickled pork. Door cracked, pistol drawn. Esther sees the light flicker from under the door. She walks toward it slowly, each footstep echoing in blood-slick silence. The fire crackles behind her. The walls creak like old bones. She opens the door. Mr. Carter jerks his pistol forward, but she's faster. She slams it shut again, locks it from the outside. He pounds. "Let me out, girl, let me out." She doesn't. She drags the heavy iron pot, the one she used to boil collards, in front of the door. The lid is still on it, still hot. "Then," she whispers, "1 for Naomi, 1 for Hope, 1 for Mama." She walks outside. The porch is lit by firelight now. Smoke twists through the sky like memory given form. The others, the enslaved men and women, are standing at the edge of the field, silent, watching. They don't cheer, they don't run. They just watch Esther walk through the front yard, past the dogs that didn't bark, past the tools she used to scrub clean. Her apron flutters in the wind. Her face is calm, not proud, not broken. Still, she stops at the edge of the cornfield, looks back once. The Carter house is fully aflame. Its windows burst in showers of orange. The roof caves with a moan. And inside, Mr. Carter is still pounding, screaming now, but no one moves. The pot stays in place. The door stays locked, and the girl who used to serve him dinner watches his house fall. She doesn't cry, she just whispers the names. Naomi, Hope, Mama, Naomi. Hope, Mama, Naomi. Hope, Mama. Until the flames drown the sound. She walks into the trees. No one follows. Later that night, someone will find the pot, blackened, cracked, still warm. Inside, only ash. The sheriff's body will be found curled near the piano. The banker's face will be crushed against a silver platter. The preacher's Bible will be opened to a blank page. The 12th man? Bones. They'll ask, who did this? But no one will answer, not because they're scared, but because they know. The girl they called Cook had become something else, a storm in silence, a flame in a dress. Memory with a knife made of powder and rage. The 12 who dined in arrogance were buried in their hunger. 1 for every lie, 1 for every lash, 1 for every scream never heard. 12 masters, 12 deaths, and a girl who became legend. Esther. They. We'll say her name in secret. not as warning, as worship. The smoke hung for 2 days, not high, not proud, but low, like shame that wouldn't lift. It curled around the trees, drifted down into the quarters, settled in the cotton rows. Black and slow and sour, the Carter house was gone. Nothing left but the bones of wood and the memory of screams. No rebuilding, no shouting, no orders. The field went quiet. No bells, no dogs, no cracking whip. Just stillness, like the land itself held its breath. No one worked. Not that day, not the next. No one dared. The overseer had vanished. The masters and all 12 as were ash and meat and silence. Some said they saw bones. Others said there were none. That the fire took everything, even names, but not hers. Not Esther. The girls in the quarters whispered it first before the sun rose. She did it. Didn't blink once. Walked out like wind. Not a tear on her cheek. The older women nodded. Said nothing. Just passed down the stories in looks and pot stirs. They had known. Known from the way she moved, the way she watched, the way she never raised her voice but always remembered every name. Naomi. Hope. Mama. They had watched her bury her mother alone. Had watched her stand still while her sisters were taken. They knew she hadn't survived to obey. She had survived to remember. Now the plantation sat empty of power. The white men were gone. The big house gone. The ledgers, the orders, the sermons, all smoke. And Esther. Esther had vanished. Some say she ran to the swamp, disappeared into the moss and mud where no one could follow. Some say she walked all the way to Savannah, slipped onto a ship and never looked back. Others say she died in the fire with the rest, by choice, by ritual, by justice. But most say she still walks. That on cold nights when the wind moves slow you can hear her name in the trees. Not whispered, remembered. Esther, Esther, Esther. Not out of fear, out of reverence. Because it wasn't rage that burned the Carter house. It was love, it was grief. It was memory boiled down to powder and stirred into supper. The field stayed quiet for days, until men came. Strangers, owners, claimers, but no one welcomed them. The fields wouldn't grow for them. The smoke hadn't left. They saw a place haunted not by spirits but by story. And stories don't leave when walls fall. They live in the dirt. The fire had taken more than lives. It had taken the structure, the order, the illusion of power, and in its place it left silence. And in that silence, Esther still walking. Still cooking, still naming. Even if no one saw her again, she stayed. Because justice cooked slow. Because grief didn't need permission. Because some dinners are meant to be the last. And the field stayed quiet. Years pass. The Carter. Plantation changes hands 6 times in 2 decades. Each time the new owners come with ledgers and whips, promises of order, visions of harvest. Each time they leave. Not because the land is cursed, but because the land remembers. Nothing grows, right? The cotton turns brown too early. The corn sours in its husk. The roots rot. The air stays thick with something no one can name. That's not smoke, not ash, not mold. Just memory. And every year, around Christmas, the air smells faintly of bitter beans, even when no one's cooking. Even when the pots are cold, they board up the quarters. They tear down the cookhouse. But the silence lingers. The girl is gone. But what she left behind never leaves. They say the land won't feed cruelty anymore, that the soil itself refuses to serve, that the wind shifts each time a white boot steps too hard on it. That fire is waiting, always waiting, just below the roots. Esther is not seen again. Not really. But they see her shape, a shadow near the tree line, a flicker behind the smokehouse, a girl with no face walking between rows where cotton once grew thick. Children in Savannah whisper her name like a spell. Esther. They write it in the dirt with sticks. They stir stew counterclockwise just once, just slow, just like she did. They say it keeps the ghosts away, but they don't mean the dead. They mean the living, the men with ledgers, the women who looked away. Some say a girl named Esther turned up in Alabama years later, teaching others how to read plant roots, not for healing but for resistance. Some say she died an old woman with scars no one could see. Some say she still walks barefoot and silent, carrying a pot of something too dark to name. The story spreads, not because someone wrote it down, but because some stories write themselves into the ground, into food, into fire. The tale of a girl who lost her sisters, her mother, her name, and made a new one. Out of powder, out of patience, out of pain. Esther, the cook who served reckoning with a side of green beans. Esther, the girl who made silence louder than sermons. Esther, the one who never screamed, but made 12 men cry blood. She's not a ghost, she's a mirror, held up to the face of history, unblinking, unforgiving, unfading. The plantation rots, the road erodes. But in little towns far from Carter soil, little girls are still named Esther. They're the ones who don't smile much, who memorize everything, who stir their food slow, who whisper names when they're alone, names of sisters, names of mothers, names of pain passed down like heirlooms. They're not haunted, they're prepared. Esther's story is told without lips, it's told in looks, in caution, in knowing when to keep your back straight and your rage quiet, until the moment comes, and when it does. They serve it hot, they serve it bitter, they serve it without apology. If this story stays with you, it's because the fire never died. If this story unsettles you, it's because justice doesn't ask permission. And if you ever smell something bitter on a quiet December night, stop. That isn't stew, that's memory. Subscribe and share with those who carry stories too heavy for paper, because some names deserve to be said again and again and again. Esther.